Hello again. We're back here at the Hall of History looking at the expansion of the American industry. You can see in the photograph here back during this time period. And again, we're getting around the turn of the century that you can see smokestacks, the smoke, the pollution in the sky. American industry was booming at this time, and mostly through the advent of coal-fired plants and hydroelectric or water power. And we'll take a look at this as we go along here. Well, there was three major factors which really pushed the U.S. into a manufacturing and industrial giant. Now, if you remember before that, we were pretty much an agricultural nation. You grew what you needed, you sold what was left over, and you pretty much took care of yourself. But post-Civil War, what ended up happening, we ended up really turning into an industrial giant. One was the wealth of natural resources. In the Northeast, you had the water power from the rivers. You get into Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, all the natural resources and coal, which fired up a lot of the plants. People started inventing of objects. The whole idea of science started taking off. Technology really started getting developed, especially with in post-Civil War era. And people wanted to make life easier for themselves and to make new things. And this whole idea of inventions. The growing urban population that provided new markets. New York, many of these big cities, you had people coming over from the European countries, and of course they went into the eastern seaboard, and you had a large population boom there, and people needed things. There was definitely not enough land for everybody to get out, and especially in the east, and provide for themselves. And so, excuse me, businesses and companies, found new ways of profit centers here. The whole idea of natural resources, excuse me, black gold, Texas tea. It's interesting to note the Native Americans actually scooped up the petroleum in excuse me, in Pennsylvania, and actually knew about it. It was literally floating at the top in some of these bogs and everything, and they knew it. And then all of a sudden, especially in the post-Civil War era, Abraham Gesner created kerosene, which was used for lamps. Before this, the whole idea of using whale oil. And so this really spelled the demise of the whaling industry in the northeast part of the United States. Edwin Drake creates the steam engine for oil drilling. Now once you scooped up all the oil that was on surface, you had to drill down for it. Gasoline is extracted from petroleum and used for the newly created automobile. This whole idea of the automobile led rise to Henry Ford. This whole idea of gasoline just transformed the United States and eventually the world. A lot of people, you think about the oil you put in your car, Pennzoil from Pennsylvania, Quaker State Oil, again from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania really started the whole oil boom, if you will, there. Also, in this area, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, was the coal mines. I know my grandfather worked in the coal mines in Pennsylvania, and they're still operating today. Get into the Appalachians there. The whole idea of steel started to come into effect, the Bessemer steel process. We learn about this, or you will learn about this in chemistry class, where they really were able to make steel cost effective and to make a very good product. The coal, again, from the Appalachians area. And also iron was found up in Minnesota in the Wasabi Range, and it started getting shipped to through the Great Lakes into Cleveland, Detroit, into those areas. The name of the Pittsburgh Steelers comes from all the steel manufacturing going there. Henry Ford, he would actually have his own ships bring this iron ore into Detroit or into nearby areas, and he would have this whole idea of vertical integration. So a very exciting time. Not a lot of government intervention on anything. The government did not get involved in too much, and people, everything was fast moving. Things started moving very rapidly during this time period. How did inventions? Well, probably the most famous of the inventions was the power of electricity. 1876, Thomas Edison, Edison Electric, if you're from the Detroit area. Actually, I think there's even some people's electric bills are from the Edison Electric Company, Detroit Edison, even around here. Menlo Park Research Laboratory. He was a scientist, an inventor. Failed, and then finally produced that incandescent light bulb. Now all of a sudden, cities, shops, homes could receive electricity. It wasn't so much where you could just work or do things during the day. You really lighted up the night with this, and it just changed how society operated. We talk here about electric streetcars are invented to move people rapidly around. Again, an exciting time. Things are changing very rapidly. Some other ones went through the typewriter. You wouldn't think much about that, but now all of a sudden you could quickly type out papers, notes, contracts. The telephone. Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Watson given credit for that. Now you could communicate with people in the next room, on the next block, in the next city, across the country. It was interesting that these were really seen as inventions to assist women in joining the workforce. You think of the old steno or typing pools. You might remember some from the old movies. The switchboard operators. Every company had their own switchboard operator. Bell Telephone Company had their own switchboard operator, and these really allowed many women to join the workforce. Well, what happened with a lot of these new inventions is that you didn't have to work longer hours. All of a sudden, you had more leisure time, and what ended up happening, if you had more leisure time, you started buying more things, consumerism, and get your products out there for these businesses. You'd have to start advertising. And so all this became important. Recreational inventions. The camera, think of the Eastman Kodak Company, upstate New York. The bicycle, Schwinn Company, phonograph records, RCA, Radio Corporation of America. All these were really developed because people had time to enjoy these things. And so it really changed how society was living in the United States. And of course, as it went in the United States and other countries, this rapidly moved, especially throughout England and the European countries. Also, growing populations. You had the large influx of immigrants from Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And of course, they all went to New York and Boston, very close to the eastern or on the eastern seaboard, and then to Chicago. And all of a sudden, you had these large populations in these cities. The workforce really just multiplied exponentially, including women. Women, as you can see here on the sewing machines. And it's interesting to note that in 1870, only 5% of the workforce is female. This was before all these inventions took place. And then by 1920, 40% of the workforce is female. Now, this is not to say they got equal pay as a man did, but they did enter the workforce. It's also interesting to note, too, there was quite a bit of child labor going on in here. And eventually we had to come up with some child labor laws.